Human bodies do decompose. If I were to pass away right now, in a few days it's going to begin to smell, if not immediately. My body is going to begin to purge. It's just not going to be a aesthetically pleasing process, and it could be a biohazard should I begin to disintegrate and ooze into the apartment below me.
Death, whether we like it or not, it comes for us all.
I think that we just don't think we're gonna die until either we're sick or someone that we know or love dearly has died or is dying.
The way we process death and the dead has evolved as a new generation of funeral directors shared with Inside Edition Digital. We'll start with the American Civil War.
We started embalming people to preserve their bodies once they died in the war and bring their bodies back north from the south.
We wanted a way to send our soldiers back to their family. Embalming is the scientific disinfection and preservation of the human body, and it allows us to hold on to the deceased for a little bit longer.
That caught on and became a more and more popular trend because families were spreading out. They weren't all living in the same state, and so for everybody to come together for a funeral, the family would often have to wait longer. And so embalming became a way to preserve the body long enough for everyone to be able to say goodbye.
The American Civil War also gave rise to a new kind of funeral industry.
Funeral homes started opening up as places where the embalming could take place, but also as locations where a body could be stored until the family could get together for the funeral. And eventually, funeral homes became these one-stop shops for every single aspect of the most popular versions of death care in America. But these were being shaped by needs that were actually slowly becoming less and less necessary.
Embalming is falling out of fashion.
Because we have so much more access to refrigeration, we don't need to embalm as many bodies.
Fewer people are wanting to be embalmed here in the United States. We are one of the only countries that still has embalming as one of our main methods of disposition. A lot of places in the world have completely turned over to cremation. What you can do with cremated remains is just completely endless. One thing that comes to mind is a space burial.
We have ignition and liftoff of it.
Where they took a small amount of cremated human remain and strapped it onto a spaceship and sent it out into space. So people are becoming a lot more creative in the way that we dispose of our dead. Our generation is now being introduced to these new methods.
There's also newer technologies. Alkaline hydrolysis is one of them. Sometimes you hear it referred to as water cremation or aquamation or even resumation.
There's things like mushroom suits.
A burial suit infused with mushroom spores, the mushroom death suit. We share a common desire to understand and accept death and to minimize the impact of our deaths on the environment.
A lot of the other alternative methods actually deal with cremated remains.
Recomposition over in Seattle and Washington, they are, for lack of a better term, doing composting with human remains. It's called natural organic reduction, and they have a really, really wonderful space where the body can be placed among natural organic materials with nothing but your birthday suit. In about 30 days, everything that you came with will be returned to soil, and that soil can go on to nourish local forests or even be returned to your family so that you can truly be that tree you want it to be.
The rituals people use to say goodbye to their loved ones are changing as well.
One of the reasons why we have funerals is to culturally adjust to somebody being biologically dead into somebody being socially dead.
It's important for us as human beings to be able to say goodbye, whether it's culturally, religiously, or just some type of tradition. We need to feel as if we did something to commemorate and celebrate the life of that individual.
We're finding new ways of adapting our rituals that bring us from biological death to social death.
Home funerals are becoming more and more popular, and the family actually caring for the deceased themselves is becoming more popular.
Bringing funerals back into the home with the guidance of a funeral director as somebody who you can turn to as we transition 130 years backwards into taking care of our own family members again.
I think that funeral service itself is going to become more personalized as opposed to traditionalized. We've seen that happen with COVID in the last year. Funeral homes and families have had to find ways to commemorate the lives of their loved ones. I also think that there's going to be more technology integrated into death care.
You see a lot of really creative ways of memorializing folks. If they weren't a person that wore a suit and liked stiff metal caskets, it doesn't really make much sense for us to put them in a suit and lay them in a stiff metal casket. If they were somebody that loved earth and maybe they knew how to weave, why not weave them something that reminds us of them and shroud them in that and make sure that their send-off is just as unique as they were. People don't always want to have a funeral at a traditional funeral home. Even if they were Christian, they might not want to go to church because they might feel as if they're closer to God in whatever way that might mean by the ocean.
People think that you just have to get what you've seen everybody else do, and that's not the case anymore.
And if all this death talk makes you feel uncomfortable, you're not alone.
Death and grief are very sacred journeys that we all have to embark on as individuals. I think people avoid conversations about death because it puts a time stamp on how much time we have left here.
But that's all the more reason to think about and talk about death.
If I could do one thing for America, it would be to give them the chance to slow down, take a moment, and breathe, and spend a little bit of time with somebody who is dying or who has died before the funeral home gets involved, before all of the ceremony and celebration and ritual begins, just to think about what it means to be with that person and be with their body. I can almost guarantee you that once somebody's done that, they will not be as scared of death as they were before, because they'll know a little bit more about what that means.
One thing I would suggest for families who want to start having conversations about death and dying is to go through old photo albums. And for some reason, the conversation always goes to someone's family, and that's the excellent opportunity to grab little details such as what one might want to wear to their funeral. Do they want a funeral at all? Do they want to be cremated? Do they want to be buried? And just the little things that maybe you wouldn't be comfortable talking about on an everyday basis, the photo album is a great place to start.
I certainly hope that we will see a lot more folks thinking about what they would like to do once they die, or what they would like to have done once they die. The more we can talk about it, the better off we'll all be.
This is Inside Edition Digital.